The courtroom fell completely silent as I picked up the pen and signed away my father's estate, business, and home. Across from me, my stepmother, Linda Miller, smiled as if she had already won. Even my lawyer, Mr. Howard, leaned closer and begged me to fight for my father's legacy. But I signed anyway. Linda's smile widened until her lawyer reached the final page. His expression suddenly changed. He turned pale and whispered something to her that made her freeze. That was when Linda realized she had made a terrible mistake. My name is Jake Miller. I was 23 when my father, Robert Miller, died. He wasn't only my father, he was my best friend and the person who had always made me feel safe. He owned Miller Furniture, a small business he had built with his own hands. When I was younger, Dad taught me everything in his workshop. He used to say that wood remembered the hands that shaped it. Those moments became some of my most precious memories. Linda entered our lives after my mother died. At first, I tried to accept her because I wanted Dad to be happy, but inside the house, she treated me like I didn't belong. She waited until Dad was gone before making cruel comments about me. I stayed silent because I didn't want to hurt my father. Years later, when Dad became sick, Linda suddenly became extremely protective of him. She controlled his medication, kept visitors away, and prevented me from speaking with him alone. Every time I tried to reach him, she appeared. Then, one night, Dad secretly called me. "Jake, come to the workshop tomorrow, alone." The next morning he gave me a small brown envelope. Inside was a key and a handwritten note. He told me to give it to Mr. Howard only after Linda made her move. Before the first could ask more, Linda arrived with a strange man named Victor Shaw. She called him a business consultant. Dad looked frightened when he saw him. 3 days later, my father died. Linda immediately began claiming everything. She showed me documents saying Dad had supposedly changed his wishes and left the house, business, savings, and workshop under her control. I refused to believe it. When I showed Mr. Howard the envelope, his expression changed. He revealed that Dad had visited him months earlier because he suspected Linda was trying to take control of the company. Dad had been collecting evidence. The key led to a private records room. Inside was a blue box. Dad had left one final message. At the hearing, Linda believed I had surrendered. She watched proudly as I signed the documents giving her control of everything. Then Mr. Howard opened the blue box. A recording of Dad's voice filled the courtroom. He explained that Linda had been working with Victor Shaw to move money, manipulate documents, and make him appear too sick to understand what he was signing. Linda immediately protested, claiming Dad had been confused. But Mr. Howard had more evidence. The documents revealed missing funds, false debts, and forged loan papers connected to Miller Furniture. Dad had also suspected that his signature had been copied onto company loans and that money had been moved into an account controlled by Linda. Suddenly, the woman who thought she had won everything realized she had accepted responsibility for everything attached to the estate, including the hidden financial crimes Dad had spent months documenting. I finally understood my father's final lesson. He had never asked me to surrender. He had asked me to be patient. He knew Linda would eventually reveal herself if she believed she had won. And that day, in front of the judge, she finally did. I looked at the blue box and remembered Dad's voice telling me never to rush the work that mattered. For the first time since his death, I understood exactly what he meant. Sometimes the strongest move is not fighting immediately. Sometimes you let the truth walk into the courtroom on its own. The courtroom had barely recovered from my father's recording when Mr. Howard revealed another shocking detail. Dad believed money had been moved from the business into private accounts controlled by Linda and Victor. Linda's confidence disappeared. Then Dad's recording continued. "Jake, I could not prove everything before I became too sick, but I made copies. If Linda says she wants everything, give it to her. Then she will have to explain everything connected to it." The recording ended. Linda laughed bitterly and accused me of using my father's voice against her. Then she insulted my mother, hoping to make me angry. But I stayed calm. I realized what she wanted. She wanted me to lose control in front of the judge so she could make me look like an emotional, unreliable young man. Instead, Judge Harris paused the estate transfer. He also ordered Linda, Victor, and everyone connected to the business documents not to sell, destroy, or transfer any property or records. For the first time, I felt like I was no longer powerless. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Howard told me there was more evidence hidden away. Dad had never kept everything in one place. The second key was hidden inside the workshop. As we drove there, Mr. Howard finally told me another secret. My father had changed his will 6 months before his death. The papers Linda had shown me were not the final will. My heart filled with a small amount of hope. Maybe Dad had known exactly what was happening. When we reached Miller Furniture, the old workshop looked abandoned. Dust covered the machines, and an unfinished rocking chair sat near Dad's workbench. Seeing it nearly broke me. Then Mr. Howard reminded me that Dad had hidden the second key somewhere only I would remember. Suddenly, I remembered the secret drawer Dad had built when I was 12. I searched beneath the workbench and found the hidden button. The drawer opened. Inside were an old baseball card, a toy car, and a small silver key. Before we could celebrate, we heard movement near the back door. Someone was outside. Then my phone buzzed. Last warning, leave the past buried. The back door suddenly opened. 2 men entered. One carried a crowbar, while the other carried a gasoline container. And behind them stood Linda. She told me I should have stopped searching. One of the men began destroying Dad's cabinets, while the other moved toward the shelves containing his old records. Mr. Howard tried to protect me, but one of the men shoved him. Then I noticed something. Mr. Howard's phone was secretly recording. The police were already on their way. Linda saw the silver key in my hand and demanded to know what it was. I refused to tell her. Then she offered me money to walk away. She accidentally mentioned the business debts. I immediately challenged her. What debts, Linda? The false debts? Her expression changed. Under pressure, Linda finally admitted that Victor had wanted the land beneath the workshop. Investors wanted to replace Dad's furniture business with stores and apartments. Dad had refused to sell because the workshop meant everything to him. So Linda and Victor created another plan. They moved money, created false debts, and manipulated documents to make Dad appear incapable of managing his company. After his death, Linda intended to take control and sell everything. Then she ordered the men to destroy the remaining records. One of them pulled out a lighter. I reacted instantly, knocking it from his hand before it could cause a fire, but the other man rushed toward me. I fell against Dad's workbench and the silver key slipped from my hand. It landed on the floor. And at that exact moment, I noticed something underneath the workbench that I had never seen before. A small metal lock. The second key was about to reveal my father's final secret. The workshop lights suddenly flashed on. Everyone froze. Police, don't move. 2 officers rushed inside, followed by Mrs. Parker, who was holding her phone tightly. She had followed us from the courthouse after noticing Victor nearby. When Linda and the men entered the workshop, Mrs. Parker stayed outside, called the police, and recorded everything. The men dropped the crowbar and gasoline can. Linda immediately tried to lie. She claimed she had come to protect the business and that the men were security workers. Mrs. Parker stepped forward. That is not true. I recorded everything. Linda's expression turned cold, but this time she could not silence anyone. The police took statements and arrested the 2 men. Linda was allowed to leave while the investigation continued, but Mrs. Parker reminded me that people who run from the truth eventually become exhausted. Inside the workshop, Mr. Howard and I finally used the silver key. It opened a hidden records room. Inside were boxes filled with my father's documents. But one blue folder immediately caught my attention. My name was written on it. Inside was Dad's real will. He had left the house to me. He had placed Miller Furniture into a trust that protected the workers and prevented anyone from selling the business without proper approval. Linda had been left enough money to live comfortably, but she would never control the company. There was also a letter from Dad. He explained that he had deliberately allowed Linda to believe she was receiving everything because the hidden debts were connected to whoever claimed control of the estate. Then we discovered something even more disturbing. One of the false loans had been connected to my late mother's life insurance records. Linda and Victor had apparently used my mother's name to create a false financial guarantee. I felt sick. This was no longer just about money. They had dragged my mother's memory into their scheme. The next morning, we gave the will, bank records, and Mrs. Parker's video to the investigators. Then we found another clue. Behind an old photograph of my parents and me was a memory card. Dad had written 3 words on it. Watch before court. What? The video showed my father sitting in his study. He looked weak, but his eyes were clear. I did not get sick by accident, he said. He explained that his health had worsened after Linda changed his medicine routine. He had started recording everything because he suspected something was wrong. Then Dad revealed that he trusted Mrs. Parker. She had a small black notebook containing dates, observations, and names. One name would hurt me. It was Ryan. Ryan had secretly borrowed money from Victor and had become trapped by debt. He had given Linda information about Dad's meetings and records. He had made terrible choices because he was afraid. But Mrs. Parker also revealed that Ryan had eventually tried to help Dad. He had argued with Linda and Victor, then promised Dad he would tell the truth the next day Dad collapsed. That night Ryan contacted me. He had evidence. We met at the old baseball field with Detective Lopez nearby. Ryan confessed everything and handed me an envelope containing messages, bank transfers, and recordings. Then a black car suddenly came toward us. Ryan pushed me out of the way. The car crashed into the bleachers, and Victor stumbled out. "You should have let Linda win," he said. His phone was still connected to Linda. That single phone call changed everything. Investigators discovered messages proving Linda had ordered Victor to stop me. Soon afterward, Linda was arrested. The evidence finally came together. Dad's recordings, the real will, the false loan documents, Mrs. Parker's notebook, the medicine bottles, Ryan's messages, and Victor's phone. Linda and Victor had planned to take control of the business and sell the valuable land beneath the workshop. But Dad had seen it coming. The court restored his real will. The house came to me. Miller Furniture remained protected under the workers' trust. Linda and Victor lost everything they had tried to steal. Ryan also faced consequences, but his cooperation and the fact that he saved my life helped reduce his punishment. Months later, Miller Furniture reopened. We kept Dad's name above the door. I finished the rocking chair he had left unfinished. It wasn't perfect, but Dad had taught me that important work should never be rushed. Looking at his photograph above the workshop entrance, I finally understood his greatest lesson. Truth can be quiet, but it never stays buried forever. And when I signed those papers in court, I thought I was giving everything away. In the end, I discovered that Dad had never abandoned me. He had left me something far more valuable than money. He had left me the truth.